Hello and welcome to the Tanis Fiber Arts YouTube channel. I am Tanis Lavallee of Tanis Fiber Arts. I am a knitwear designer and a yarn dyer, and I designed this sweater. It's called the Ronstadt Sweater, and today we're going to talk about it. So obviously this sweater combines two of my great loves, knitting and crochet, and very specifically crocheted granny squares, and even more specifically because there are there's lots of different types of granny squares, but this very specific, classic, basics, beautiful, perfect granny square. So this is the fourth. I've got all my other patterns here. We're going to walk through them. The fourth design that I have published featuring granny squares combined with knitting. I am first and foremost a knitter. I have recently learned to crochet in the past decade. I've been knitting for like over 30 years, so a decade is recent history for me. And even more recently, I have started combining the two together, and I am obsessed because, as I say, knitting is my happy place. It's my comfort zone. It's something that I'm really comfortable designing with, and crochet is newer to me in terms of being a designer. So sticking with the squares and just working around them really seems to work for me. And yeah, I'm just loving every minute of it. So I've done a couple videos like this in the past. Last year I did one, actually I think it was 2025 as well, but it was in the spring, feels like last year, last school year. I talking about my Getty teed pattern, and I walked you through the patterns that I had done before that. So if you've watched that, this is going to be kind of repetitive, but if this is your first video of mine, I want you to get all caught up. So we're going to go over them. But also I'm going to talk specifically about this one. So what can I tell you about Ronstad? Well, Linda Ronstad, a huge fan of hers. So when I've named all of my crochet knitting hybrid patterns sort of inspired by like 70s music icons. And so Ronstad it was time. It was the perfect fit. And I'm really, I've been listening to a lot of her music lately since I decided to call this pattern that. And I mean, what a great way to spend the day. So Ronstad is a raglan. It's really basically a raglan construction, and a raglan construction where you've got all of your shaping in 4 spots, front and back, left and right shoulder, kind of here down to the armpit. And what's really neat is the granny squares just kind of continue in that line of the raglan, which I think is really fun, a really neat sort of a little bit of geometry there that works super well. The construction is interesting. You start with the granny squares. That's the case for all of my knit crochet hybrids. You start with the granny squares, and then you build out from there with your knitting. So once you've got your granny squares complete and sewn together, you pick up stitches around the top and you knit the yoke, and then you pick up stitches around the bottom and you knit top down from there, the sleeves and the bottom. And there's some shaping so that your neck fits comfortably. There's some really fun details. Like, I'm really happy with how the collar is worked. It's a folded under, I should say, where it's sewn down on the inside. So you've got this cushy, warm, and structured ribbed collar. But the way that I did it, and I've got a video linked in my in the pattern, and I've got a crochet hybrid knit playlist here on YouTube where you'll find the video as well. A video where I show exactly how to work this so that you end up with, I hope you can see it, but there's like a really crisp little horizontal line that separates the knit from the ribbing, and I think it's a really nice little detail to add some sharpness to the collar, some nice tailoring. The 2 specific videos that I've added for this pattern is the collar working and then exactly how I picked up the stitches, because for this specific pattern, because it's the same concept as what I did for my other patterns. The difference is the difference is what, because they're, yes, sometimes the rate that I pick them up at is different. Sometimes because I need to get a certain amount of stitches on the needles to work up or work down to get the right sizing. There's all these little, these little tweaks, this little finessing that happens when you're designing a pattern. And so for this one, I've included a video with specifically how I did it. And also all that information is included in the pattern if you don't need to watch the video. Yeah, what else can I tell you about it? I mean, the colors of this sweater really make my heart happy. And so I'm going to tell you about how I work on my crocheted patterns. I think that's a great place to start. And again, this is where I'm sorry things will get a little bit repetitive, but basically this is a bin that it's not that big. I mean, I don't know if you think that this is a ton or if you're like, that's it. This is a bin where I keep all of my leftover DK weight yarn. Now, the exception to that is if I bought a sweater's worth of yarn and I have 1.5 skeins left after knitting my sweater, I will put those somewhere else where it's like, those are not really leftovers yet. I could get a whole other project out of that, like a whole hat or a whole mitt or a whole cowl or whatever. So those are in like full skein storage. This is all where like all I have is partial skeins left. So I finished knitting something, I have partial skeins. It's all Tanis Fiber Arts yarn at this point because that's my life. And this is it. So these are all my leftover DK weight yarn. And in here is in somewhere in here, right here, is my crochet hook. I'm going to upgrade one day and get a fancier, nicer crochet hook. This is what I use. But you know what? I have no complaints. I got this from my mom when I decided to learn how to crochet, and it just works for me. So I don't know. Maybe I will, maybe I won't upgrade. I don't get that jazzed about tools, so it's not the most important thing to me. Okay, then I have this bad boy, and this is a bin where I keep all of my finished granny squares. They're kind of a disaster at the moment because my kids are allowed to play with them and they go through them and they just kind of like play with the colors. They organize or unorganize them. One of my kids likes to just crochet granny square, rain, confetti, just throw them up. But basically, every once in a while, the way that I approach it, if I have nothing else that I'm currently working on, or if I just feel like a break, or if I just feel like playing with color, I will grab my bin of leftover DK weight yarn and I will make a square. I'll just start with whatever color sparks my interest, catches my eye. Oftentimes it'll be the smallest little balls that I have because I'm like, if I have something really tiny, let's use it all up. It gives me a lot of satisfaction. So I'll grab the smallest little one like this. And then I'll make a pink center, and then I'll go from there. Okay, then I've been always doing 5 color granny squares, 5 round. Just seems to be where I land, and it's what I've been using for all of my patterns as well. To start with, I can go up or down when I'm doing the sizing. Sometimes you might need a 4 round, sometimes you might need a 6 round. But I go from there. I just pick colors that I like. See if I have one that I started with pink. I don't. I thought that would be fun, but not handy. Oh, well, that's not the same pink, but there's one where I started with pink, and then I just go from there. And then this takes me like, 10 minutes to make a granny square. So if I'm sitting, doing homework with the kids or whatever, make a square, then make another square. Oftentimes when I make one in a color, I tend to make another one, like sort of playing on those same colors. So each sitting, I'll make a handful of squares, realistically maybe like 3 or 4, and then I'll just put them in my bin and wait for them to call to me to be used. I have no other rhyme or reason. This one I love. This one I think is a really fun color story, and it doesn't always happen. There's no rule that I have to do them all in the same palette when I sit down. It's just that tends to happen because I'm sort of in a color zone. But then maybe I'll grab another like completely different family of colors to do another series. Like, as I say, there's no rhyme or reason. But I've got all these really fun crocheted granny squares just sitting there in my bin waiting for me to use them. And then when I'm looking for inspiration, I'm ready to cast something on. This is exactly what I did this fall for this. I sat down with all of my granny squares, I dumped these out, and I sort of start organizing them by color. So maybe I'll put all of my sort of pinky ones together, all of my kind of primary colored ones together, ones that I think, like these two I would have put together because they're almost identical, but they're not. I start putting them in general groupings of color, and hope that inspiration strikes. Sometimes when I set out to design this one, I was really just playing with the colors, playing with all my squares, and hoping that I would come up with some sort of idea or something like it would call to me of what it wanted to be. And it did. It really did. I started playing with all of these ones that I chose for this particular sweater. They're really quite different. Like this one, really kind of punchy turquoise, lime, chartreuse, goldenrod, like punchy colors, compared with like this one, for example, wildly different. Like they don't necessarily look like they belong in the same sweater. And that's where like the play really comes in, and it starts to be, you just kind of have to follow your heart, follow your instincts. And if it looks good to you, then it works, right? Like that's the whole point. You just need to like it. And so as I was laying these out, I usually probably kind of like start in a row, or maybe kind of start building a grid, like a square, to see what they look like. I found that as long as they relate to the squares that are next to them, then they can work together as a whole. And these ones, I kind of felt they were all sort of fall, I'm calling it a fresh fall palette, because some, like this one and this one, I find very definitively fall, with sort of like the cinnamon and the brown and the tan colors. And then like this one, oh, this is also definitely a fall one. Less definitely fall. This could also be a spring palette. So it's a fresh fall palette. This one's really fun and kind of ties it all together, because it's got that bright turquoise, but then it also has these fall kind of rusty colors in it. And so that's where things kind of start to get exciting for me, and I'm playing with all the colors. Excuse me. Laying everything out and seeing what's going to happen. And then I had this idea as I was playing with them that I wanted to do a sweater. I wanted it to be a pullover. You know, you sort of start to things start to materialize. And I initially thought maybe I would sew them all together in like a hoop, like a circle, and that I could work that into the yoke somehow, because I was thinking of these sort of like Nordic ski sweater style things, and that's still something that maybe I'll explore for a different type of construction. But then I realized how if you sew them like in a rectangle with sharp corners, that's a raglan, like that's the shape. And so when I settled on that, things just started flying. So I sewed them all together, and then the main colors that I chose, this is our Caramel Show colorway, and this is our Tahari colorway. I picked the Caramel Show first. I just felt like it really leaned into the fall vibes that I was feeling from the sweater, from the granny squares. And then the Tahari, I just think really balanced it out. It's very, very me. I love blue. So to add some of that to it, just works for me. So sometimes people ask if I set out, like, what comes first, the color or the design or the feel, like, you know, how does it go? And for me, it really all just kind of takes on a life of its own. So I knew I wanted a sweater. I did not know what color palette. I was leaning, I thought that I had a lot of these sort of icy blue ones, and I thought this was going to maybe happen, but it wasn't what I was most drawn to. I ended up drawn to this one. It is the fall, so I was clearly inspired by the season that I'm in, and I just really leaned into that fall, and this is like my most favorite fall sweater of all time at this point. So it took on a life of its own, and I'm just so happy with where it took me. Like, look, these could be really fun together. I can't hold them all up, but like just kind of bright, vivid colors. Like there's no end to where you can go, and I find these crocheted granny squares are such a fun little way to play around with color pairings. They're quick to make, they're low commitment, they don't require that much yardage, and you can just really have a lot of fun with them. And even, so I will point out, like some of these, let me find, I don't think that this is like the most successful color combo I've ever come up with, but when you put it together with all the other ones in a sweater, it all works. I always say when you're pairing lots of colors, I was gonna say more is more, but that's not always true. It's nice to keep it within a palette, just sort of have a vision for the overall vibe that you want. Like there's no pastels, there's no light pinks, there's no lavender colors in here. You know, I've really kept to a certain palette. And then, but also not every square can be the star. That's true for anything that you're doing where you're combining colors. You need some that are supporting characters, and then you need some that are stars. And so for me, I love this one. I love this one. I've put them right in the front. If every single one was as punchy as this, and if I said, oh, I love this one, and I'm going to make them all like this, it wouldn't have the same vibe. I still think it would be pretty. They would just all be really symmetrical, and they would be really super coordinated and really thought out. And it wouldn't look as sort of like haphazardly, casually funky. It's just a totally different look. But it's a really fun way to play with color. And as I've said every single time I talk about this bin, at the end of the day, when I no longer feel that I need to keep all of these on hand for crochet granny square emergencies, I'll just sew them all together, and then I'll have like an amazing, I'll probably sew them together with a border with a sashing color, something in between, and then it'll be a beautiful granny square blanket. And something else I should touch on is for this pattern, and then also all of my other granny square patterns, you could substitute any other granny square design that you like, as long as they end up the same finished size. The measurements are all included in the pattern. If you're a adventurous or experienced crocheter and you can make a granny square that'll end up the same dimensions as what's required for the pattern, but there's another motif that you like, something maybe with like a circle in the center. I've seen a lot that are really, really cute that kind of look like flowers. They're circles. And so I mean, I really should branch out, and I will one of these days. I'm going to do something with a different motif. But there's a lot of options to customize it in that way if you'd like. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I'm really made happy by these symmetrical, lovely little squares. Oh, I love this one. But feel free to make it your own. I mean, of course, that's the dream, you know. That's what we want. So what I mean by that is I love seeing people make patterns their own. That's why you make your own clothes, right? You don't have to stick to the designer's vision entirely. You can use it as a jumping off point. That's the whole point. So I'm going to talk about my other crochet knit hybrids, just so that we've got them all in one place. And as I say, if this is your first time finding one of my videos, well, now you'll be all caught up. So the first pattern that I published is called Fleetwood, and it is a pullover with a big crochet granny squared insert on the front. The back is all knit, the sleeves are all knit, the collar, this is just really like a nice big central panel. And this was my very first one. The granny squares, once again, they were not thought out ahead of time. They were just picked from my pile. These I was just going for like a really fun, colorful vibe because I knew I wanted the body of the sweater to be white. And I'm so happy with how this one turned out. It is such a cozy, warm sweater. It's knit in worsted weight rather than DK weight, and it is one of my all-time favorite cozy winter sweaters. I look forward to wearing. I don't think it's cold enough here yet for it, so as soon as the temperatures drop, I will be wearing that nonstop. Next, after that, I was immediately afterwards, I cast on for my Jethro. My Jethro cardigan is made up of a lot more granny squares, a panel down the front, the whole back is granny squares, and then the ribbing around the opening, the ribbing around the bottom, and the sleeves are knit. And so this uses a lot of, I mean, this one I absolutely love, and I think you guys do too. This is one of my most popular patterns to date of all time, not just hybrid patterns, one of my most popular patterns, and one that I'm really proud of, and one that I wear a lot. And something that was really interesting, I recently did an interview for somebody who's doing a knit along, or a make along, I should say, for this pattern. And she asked me a question that I thought was really interesting. She said sort of what surprised you about when you were designing it, what challenges were there? And I've gone into detail in another video about combining knit and crochet, that really there's two main challenges, and that is matching the gauge of your crochet to the gauge of your knitting, and that's kind of where how many stitches you pick up comes in, and some of that nitty gritty. But then the other challenge is that when you're working with crocheted granny squares specifically, and this pattern, it's just the squares, there's no other crochet. I really wanted these patterns to be really accessible to knitters who are new to crochet, where all you got to do is make the square. There's no shaping done in crochet, that's all done in knitting. So what that means, though, is that you're working with these larger units. And if a pattern is only knit, the units that you're working with are stitches. They're really small. You can make really minute changes. Whereas when you're working with an entire square, to add a square or remove a square, you're really, it's a large measurement. It makes really big difference to the overall fit or finish of the garment, the overall size of the garment. So that's a real challenge when working with the granny squares. But the surprise and delight came in with, it was really eye-opening to see how much maybe I've been overthinking my knitwear designs in terms of all the minutia of every single stitch. And now, of course, you want stuff to fit really well, and knitting doesn't have the same structure that the crochet has. The seams in the crochet, it really, and it's a bit denser. It holds its shape quite well, I have found. And so basically my point is these are just rectangles sewn together, and the way that it fits and hangs on the body is absolutely stunning. And so the delight came in when I was like, there's no neck shaping, there's no shoulder shaping, there's no short rows, there's none of this stuff that I'm always, that I feel necessary in knit patterns, and it still works beautifully and it still fits beautifully. And I'm not saying that I need to like sort of dumb down my knitting patterns or take out the tailoring or take out the details. It's not about that. It's more just like, wow, sometimes the simplest solution really is the best. Maybe that, and my point is, she said what surprised you, maybe delighted you about the pattern writing process, and that's the point. That's what it was. It is surprising and absolutely delightful that it is such a simple shape, such a simple construction, and it is, in my opinion, wildly successful and ended up like very flattering. And I think it's really a large part due to the just the quality of the knit and crochet combined. You get the tailoring where you need it in the sleeve, and the comfort and like the drape, and then you get the structure where you need it in the body, which is very cool. And this one also shows, again, just sort of all the combining, picking a palette and sticking to it. Like this one, you wouldn't necessarily think goes with this one, because there's this one, there's no overlapping colors really, but it all, I hope you can even see that. I was pointing to this and I was pointing to this. But to me, they work really well all together as a palette. And this is my all-time favorite palette. There's some, as you can see why I put these ones front and center. There's some overlap in all of my projects, of course. So then my most recent before Ronstad is the Getty tee. And the Getty tee has less crochet than Jethro. It's just the saddle shoulders on this beautiful, look at that gorgeous shoulder, on this lovely V-neck boxy tee. And this is such a fun shape for me to wear. This is how I mean, this is my uniform, jeans and this. I absolutely love it. And this is a fun one. Just a little bit of crochet. You can do whatever colors you like. I've seen people make this one really, really classy. They use like a sparkly yarn for a single color, I think black, sparkles for the crocheted granny squares, and then the rest of the sweater was knit in a solid, so it's just sort of like in a solid black. So you just got that little detail on the shoulder. And then I also recently, like literally just yesterday, saw a beautiful version of the Jethro cardigan in a single color. She knit it all in a color, basically like our caramel show, a nice amber orange, single color Jethro, and just absolutely stunning. So there's lots of options, lots of possibilities. I think that covers it. I wanted to just reiterate that I have a playlist with lots of pattern support. If you need it, I'm always available if you have questions, because I know some people are daunted by combining the two. Oh, and to that point, I'm going to add a link in the description box with a pattern. I can't off the top of my head remember the details of, I think it's called Knitted Granny Square, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the designer, but it's going to be in the description box. She's designed a granny square that can be knit for those of you who are knitters, not crocheters, and you want to just knit a granny square. You can do it, and then you can make any of my crochet knit hybrid designs. And so hopefully that opens the door for you. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you have fun playing with all these different fiber arts together. And if you do decide to make it, I'd love to know what you think. So I just got to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. And I have another crochet knit hybrid, a smaller one in the bank that I'm just putting the finishing touches on, and I'm excited to show you that one next. So stay tuned for that, and have a great day.